Now, I'm going to turn over our program and pleased to introduce Press Club past president, Corey Hess, who is a political reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And Corey will make some opening remarks, introduce the panel, and Corey will then introduce the governor. All right, Corey, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Milwaukee Press Club past president Corey Hess from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I'm so happy to be here today with Governor Evers. Before we get started, I want to thank our event sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is Spectrum News One. Our supporting sponsor is We Energies. I would also like to thank our event partners, Rotary Club of Milwaukee and WISPolitics.com. WISP Politics partners with the Press Club for this luncheon as part of an ongoing series the Press Club does. And our event is also sponsored by UW-Milwaukee, Wisconsin Academy of Global Education and Training, 1125 at Pabst, Milwaukee Police Association, the Firm Consulting, Medical College of Wisconsin, and Spectrum. I would like to also welcome our media panel. We have Molly Beck from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Diana Gutierrez from WISN 12, and Ryan Jenkins from TMJ4. Now back to Governor Evers. Governor Evers was elected as the 46th governor of Wisconsin in November 2018. He served as Wisconsin State Superintendent, winning statewide elections 3 times before being elected governor. Governor Evers will face Republican challenger Tim Michels in less than a month, finally, on November 8th in the midterm election. The Milwaukee Press Club and WISP Politics has reached out to Mr. Michels to be a guest at an event similar to this one, but we have not heard back. That invitation remains open. Governor Evers, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Greetings, folks. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Is this all right? High enough? I'll shout loudly. Everybody hear me fine. Good, thank you. Anyway, thanks to the Press Club and obviously the Rotary Club and WISP Politics for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm just going to give some initial context and then we'll get into some questions. But I just want to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished and what we hope to do in the future. And, you know, a lot of division going on in this race, clearly. But during this last 4 years, I've done everything in my power to bring common sense leadership, and being a Wisconsinite my entire life, bring those values to the job. And orange barrels every place you drive. We've fixed the damn roads, folks. I made that promise when I took office and actually when I was running last time. And we've been able to fix over 5,000 roads and 1,500 bridges. And that's important not only for safety, but it gets product to market better and in a safe way. We've also brought broadband to over 370,000 households in the state of Wisconsin. Obviously, that's a huge accomplishment. And most of it, frankly, in rural Wisconsin. And I'll just tell you a quick story. I know every story I tell is one less question, so I apologize for that. But I was in Northwest Wisconsin in a township meeting, and they had just finished getting broadband to the people in that township, about 300 people. And they had given up. And 4 people in that township of 300 people said, enough of this. We are going to get broadband. Very, very difficult. Lots of hills, lots of valleys, lots of rocks. Nobody would do it. Anyway, they did a survey of all 300. They got some people that were able to help along that, and they talked their township board into some money. They went to the Public Service Commission, who distributes money for this. They got a grant, and a year later they had broadband. And one of the four that was the leader of the band there came up and talked to me when I was visiting that township. And he said when he left home today to drive to the meeting, they were just bringing the cable to his house. I said, that's great. He said, I cried. And that was one of the most important things for me to hear, because so many times we assume if we've got it, everybody else has got it. They don't have it. And in order for businesses to thrive, and frankly for human beings to get along in this world, they have to have internet. We're going to bring that internet to another 300,000 over the next 3 years. Been able to invest in education at the highest level ever. We've cut income taxes by 15%, which has left in the neighborhood of $4 billion in tax relief to the people of Wisconsin. And as a result of our work during the pandemic, especially, where we are #1 in the nation in the percentage of federal funds that went to businesses, and primarily small businesses, because it was very clear where the problems were during the pandemic. Whether it's small businesses, whether there are farmers, whether the tourism industry, bars, restaurants, you name it, small businesses got about $1 billion of investment from the state of Wisconsin. And by doing that, we now have one of the best economies that we've had. Obviously, there's an issue around finding workers, but the reason that is so difficult is we have a 2.8 to 3.0, someplace in the middle unemployment rate. It's the largest number of people that are working in the state's history at this point in time. We have a huge rainy day and surplus amount of money in our budget, and that wasn't just federal money that we put there. We put federal money went out for public health and for those businesses. That's a primary use of that money. We did not say, well, let's just stuff that into the budget surplus. That money in that surplus came from the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin. So those are the things we've accomplished over the last 4 years. Our economy is strong. I feel good about the future. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's at stake here in this election. And the last 3.5 years, I played goalie a lot, I'll admit that. And I think I've vetoed in the neighborhood of 146, 45 bills. Many of those bills were going to make it harder for people to vote, make it more difficult for our kids in their schools, such as let's put guns, let's let people with loaded guns be in the school grounds, and also a lot of bills on abortion. I vetoed those because I believe that women have that right to choose. Anyway, just to flip that on its head, I don't believe I'm going to lose. In fact, I plan to win. But my opponent is in a different place on all those issues, and all 146 bills will come back from the legislature. They're going to be a Republican majority. There's no question about that. And he will sign those into law. Wisconsin will be a different place. Mr. Michaels supports policies that, frankly, I don't believe the people of Wisconsin support. Some do, no question about it, but I think they're radical, and I think they're dangerous. And let's start out with the 1849 abortion law that now is what we're working under in the state of Wisconsin. And it is, he said, it's an exact mirror of what he wants. So obviously he supports that, and he won't even support exemptions for rape or incest. To me, that's radical. I believe that women should have the right to make those reproductive health decisions. The state of Wisconsin is going to look like a different place if we even a different place. Sooner or later, the Wisconsin College of Medicine and University of Wisconsin Medical School, they'll lose their accreditation in training OBGYNs. And we have a shortage already. If they're put out of business in that world, that's going to be a problem for the state of Wisconsin. We won't be producing our own. I'd say we're going to have a hell of a time in encouraging OBGYNs from out of state to move here under that ban. My opponent also opposes red flag laws. It's meant to keep guns out of the hands of individuals that are dangerous either to themselves or others. We've tried that. That's actually been a bill that we've tried to get passed along with universal background checks without much help from the legislature. But he's definitely against that, and I think that's in the wrong place. He's still uncertain about the last election. I'm not. I think Joe Biden won that election. And when we have somebody that is in the position that I am in, that certifies elections, that says publicly that they're going to, they don't know how they'll answer the question. If a legislature says, you know, we're going to decertify the last election, and he's saying, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about that. That's a problem for our state. I certify elections. I know what you have to go through. You go through a very specific process. You can't waver from that process. If you do, you're breaking the law. And so for him to be taking that position at this point in time, that puts our voting rights at risk. And he's also said it's insanity to pay more money for our public schools. Someone that's run for office 3 times in that arena, that disturbs me. There's a reason that we have 99 referendum across the state of Wisconsin at the same time that this last election. Schools do not have enough money. They do not have enough money, and they show that every time by the fact that they're running for a referendum so that they can get the local people to help them. So clearly, there's clear choice between what the 2 finalists here believe that Wisconsin should be doing going forward. You know, I get it. I'm not the flashiest guy in the room, but I will always honor and respect and work with compassion and fairness to lead this state of Wisconsin. We've got a long way to go before the 8th. It may seem like a short time to you, but a lot of things will happen between now and then. And I believe I'm the one to win. I believe that this state will look in a much different place if I don't win. And I also want to just do one last thing to talk about, and that's a top priority for me going forward. And this isn't necessarily for Milwaukee, it's for all municipalities. A top priority for me in the next budget is going to be to reset our relationship, the state's relationships with cities and counties. Cities and counties do the hard work in the state, whether it's police, fire, EMT, whether it's courts, you name it. Cities and counties do that work. If we want to make some, first of all, the last 10 years has brought us, even with my requesting more money for counties and cities, the last 10 years, it's been a decrease of about 9%. All the work that has to be done by the cities and counties, especially here in Milwaukee, we have to increase shared revenue. Simple as that. That will be my top priority. There's only so much that they can do without money. And my goal is to provide those resources. 0% for the last 10 years is anything but adequate. We're going to work hard to make that happen. I hope from your vantage point that you will also think about how important that is for this city. I always knew that, I know that this city sends a lot of tax money down the road to Madison. You should be getting more than 0% increases over the last 10 years. So that's my goal. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I've got this great group of people that are going to make my life difficult by asking me the hardest questions I've ever had. So thank you, folks. Excuse me. Yes.
Well, Governor, I guess I will kick things off here and ask you a question about something that you actually just talked a little bit about, and that was access to high-speed internet. Your plan to use 40 million ARPA dollars to expand access to high-speed internet here in Wisconsin was recently approved. So I'm wondering, what projects can Wisconsinites expect to see here in the near future to expand high-speed access to internet? And what are you doing from your position to ensure that those projects are getting done in an inclusive and equitable way?
Yeah, great question. As I said before, and that's why I use that personal story around Northwest Wisconsin, 300 people. They never had broadband before. And how important it was to that individual that he would say he's crying because it's finally at his door. So we primarily, a lot of that work has been happening in rural Wisconsin, but there are obviously urban pockets around the state. And we're going to continue that good work. The Public Service Commission does a great job. One of my favorite people in my cabinet is an advisor, is Beck, who is from this part of the world. She does a great job as chair of the Public Service Commission. This is one of those, everybody in the room probably thinks, when the hell are the Republicans and Democrats going to get together and do something? This is something that goes across party lines. Everybody rural Wisconsin, a lot of Republican legislators, and urban areas it's something that's bipartisan. We will get state money for this. I know we will, and we will be asking for state money. Our calculations are we've done 387,000. We're going to also in the next 3 years get 300,000 more. Then there's going to be another 300,000 left over. But we also have to worry about it being affordable. And that's something that I care about, and especially in the urban areas. And I know we've provided some resources for various groups in Milwaukee, but other cities across the state, so that they can work together to make sure not only is the stuff there, the pieces of hardware, but we also have to make sure that even if all those pieces are in place, that people can afford it. And especially in urban areas where we might have people that their cost of living is pretty high to begin with. They don't have the money to pay for internet. We have to find ways to make that cheaper, and that means we'll probably end up working with the cities and counties to subsidize some of those costs.
Governor, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with a question that's been on my mind since overnight tonight. In just 6 hours overnight in Milwaukee, we had 7 people shot, one of those shootings claiming the life of a 12-year-old girl. Now, some residents that our reporters talk to, that in fact every reporter talks to, they say that they're scared to leave their home. They're scared that a bullet is going to come through a window. What is your plan to reduce crime? And if you're reelected, can municipalities use the American Rescue Plan Act for public safety?
Yes, they can. We already did. We've all those things that you mentioned are horrible. They're things that we should not stand for as a state or as a country. During the pandemic, we actually put $150 million on the table for municipalities, in fact, primarily the Milwaukee area, to provide violence prevention, also money for law enforcement, money for other areas that the city felt important. The infrastructure, or the ARPA money, the federal money, is coming to an end. I mean, we used the vast majority of that for public health, which we're supposed to. The rest of it we've invested in all sorts of things. A lot of it had to do with businesses, but a really good share of it also went towards making sure that our communities are safe. We'll continue to do that. That has to happen with state money, and it is one of the reasons that we're making communities and counties and cities the shared revenue. We're looking at 12% in the first 2 years of the biennium. That's going to be a significant increase, considering they got 0% over the years prior to that. We have to. What that will do is make sure that Milwaukee and any other place in the state really can comprehensively look at crime and how we address those things. Clearly, there's all sorts of things that connect the dots, but just in the criminal justice area, we need to think about, do we have, because this happened during the pandemic. The state paid for, with ARPA funds, to have night courts here in Milwaukee, make sure that we had enough people in the judiciary to make that move forward, so we weren't having people that were waiting for trial over a year long, not saying they're guilty or innocent, just waiting. So by providing more resources for cities and counties, we'll be able to start to connect the dots there. It's not just the most shiny object of the day, but do we need some more assistant DAs? Do we need more investigators from that office? Do we need more bailiffs? Do we need more public defenders? All those, and of course, training for our police and fire and EMTs. All those things can start to be thoughtfully worked on if we provide the resources for those counties and municipalities to do that. In addition, and I mentioned this before, I am very concerned about gun violence. I think there are some things that we can do to address that issue from the state level, and that's red flag laws and universal background checks. All those things can make a difference, and if we look at this by connecting the dots, we're going to be in a much better place.
Governor, moving to the issue of abortion, Republican lawmakers have not moved as of yet to repeal the state's abortion law that is now back in place now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. If lawmakers sent you a bill that kept the ban in place but added exceptions for pregnancies that result from sexual assaults and incest, would you sign it?
Well, first of all, and I have to say this again, I believe women do have the right to make reproductive health decisions for themselves. They can consult with faith leaders and others in their family, but that's their choice. It shouldn't be a politician's choice, and that's where I absolutely disagree with my opponent. And frankly, no, I wouldn't sign it because that leaves the underlying law in place, which is a ban on abortion here, because politicians in Wisconsin decided that they know more than the women do. The women that want to have reproductive health decisions made by themselves. That's a basic here. So, doing something around that to that law is not where I am. I think we should codify Roe v. Wade and get back to the way it has been for the last 50 years in the state of Wisconsin.
We heard you describe your opponent, Tim Michels, as radical and divisive. How would you respond to maybe an undecided voter who would say even that rhetoric from you is divisive?
Yeah, the rhetoric from me is divisive. Was that your question or your statement?
That might be their opinion.
Yeah.
Say that.
Yeah, I'm from Plymouth, Wisconsin, folks. My views are anything from radical. I don't believe that having women make those decisions is inappropriate. I think it's highly inappropriate. I will continue to support that. Do I think that we should be providing resources for our public schools across the state, not just Milwaukee, across the state? Yes, I do. Actually, there's been lots of money going in the schools, but it's been for property tax relief. So I don't think those are particularly radical. Clearly, in any election, and this one is no exceptions, as you get down towards the end, things get thrown around. But at the end of the day, people will vote. It's going to be close. It's going to be a close election. I understand that. I never thought it would not be a close election. We're a purple state, but at the end of the day, I don't believe saying that someone's view on abortion that is his view is radical or a problem. Maybe I could say it's a problem, but it is radical. It is a radical change from what we had it before. It's a huge change to say, well, we're not going to fund our public schools. We're not going to give an increase to our public schools because that's insanity. I'd say that's a radical position. So he's also taken the position on schools that they're going to lose 40% of their funding. That's radical. That's a radical position. I think when you hang out with Gableman and you spend time and effort thinking about all the bad things that happened in the last election that didn't happen, our elections are safe, secure, fair, you name it. Any court in the land or court in Wisconsin said that. And he's with Gableman talking about this massive amount of fraud that puts him in the position to not being able to certify or decertify an election. To me, that's radical. I'm calling him out on it. Yes. Do I think I like doing that? No. But when I ran against Scott Walker, you didn't hear me talking like that about Scott Walker. We had huge policy differences. This one is more than huge.
Governor, now to a conversation that's happening really all across the nation. The 2020 census shows Wisconsin's Latino population increased by 7.6%, making the Latinos the largest minority group in the state. The latest Pew Research Center survey from September shows that Latinos usually tend to vote Democrat. And last year, we know the RNC opened a GOP Latino Community Center on the south side of Milwaukee. We've seen your opponent, Tim Michaels, taking photos, talking to people in the Latino communities. Besides airing ads on TV, whether it be Spanish media, social media in Spanish, what else are you doing to ensure that Latinos trust you with their vote?
Absolutely. Well, I spent a lot of time in the Latino community here in Milwaukee. It's not just for photo ops. On my day job as governor, I've done that even throughout the pandemic. Here's my basic theory here, though, and I don't think this is radical. I think diversity makes our state stronger. It's a basic. One of my values points is basic. And as a result of that, during the pandemic, we did provide resources to especially small businesses in the Latino community, not just here in Milwaukee, but across the state of Wisconsin. In addition, because of the strength of the business community and especially small businesses in the Latino community, we provided some resources for the Latino Chamber of Commerce and also the Hispanic Collaborative that is located right here in Milwaukee. Those are all things that I think are important because I do believe that diversity makes us stronger as a state. One of the areas that I'll go right to that I disagree with my opponent is that we have 70,000 people in the state of Wisconsin that are undocumented workers. And they span from working in our farms across the state to all sorts of other arenas. In many cases, they are what makes our state strong. And I'll use the agricultural sector as an example. If we decided at some point in time that isn't a good operation, that we shouldn't have that happening, we would no longer be the dairy state. We would no longer be the dairy state. That's how much work is done by undocumented, primarily hardworking Latino workers. And I also believe, and I know my opponent does not believe this because I saw it on a TV ad right after Donald Trump endorsed him, that I believe that in-state tuition for children of these folks, as well as DACA folks, they should deserve in-state tuition. We need as many quality people, trained people as possible in the state of Wisconsin. That should be a given. We should also provide, which we did have. Republicans put this in the law. They changed it later for some unknown reason. But driver's permits, people would have to be trained and making sure they knew how to drive well. It'd be a safety issue, but it would also allow them to get to work. I've talked to farmers across the state where they have to go and finally get, because their workers have been arrested so many times, they end up in jail overnight. The farmer has to go in, pick them up at the county seat, bring them out, have them milk the cows. Really, we can do better than that in the state of Wisconsin. So yes, I think Latino community is a really important community for us. It's whether you look at it from economic development or just the fact that diversity makes us stronger. That is where I'm at.
And with that message, do you feel confident that the Latino vote will stay with the Democratic Party?
I think it's a right move. I think my position is so much different than my opponents on this issue. I think they will vote Democratic, but they're just like anybody else. They're going to make their individual decisions, but I think we're in the right place for that.
Your Republican challenger, Tim Michaels, has said he's open to a flat income tax. Are you open to a flat income tax, and if so, at what rate?
Well, certainly I'd like to see the proposal. It's easy to say, well, maybe we're going to do it. I prefer, and this is something that I've challenged the Republicans to come in and take up in our budget right now. You know, inflation is an issue in our state and across the country. Pretty simple for me. I think it's a three-stepper. You bring the legislature in. We're going to cut again income taxes for middle-class people by 10%. We would also get rid of the minimum markup law that costs consumers about 30 cents a gallon or more, and we should provide increased tax credits for those that have childcare costs. So that's what I think we should do around inflation. The question you asked was, do I support a flat tax? Flat tax is anything but progressive, although I would wait to hear exactly what that proposal is to make a final decision. I'm skeptical of it. It's going to help him a lot more than him personally, a lot more than most people in the state of Wisconsin.
On your campaign website, you acknowledge that seniors are struggling to afford their medications. And it's no secret that prescription drug prices are very expensive. We've heard a lot of conversation at the federal level about trying to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. What can you do as governor to help Wisconsinites who are struggling to afford their medications?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is a federal issue because pharmaceutical companies don't just sell to Wisconsin and no other state. So those costs are going to be. So I'm supportive of efforts on the federal level to reduce those costs. I think we can make some difference right off the bat on the insulin issue. I think $35 a copay is sufficient to cover the costs of the drug companies. That other states have done that as a stepping stone to possibly further regulations. But I sense that it's better taken care of on the federal level. I think we can do some things on the local level that's more focused, and I would say insulin is one of those.
Now, Governor, if Republicans get the supermajority, and let's say we talk about something like driver's license for undocumented, it's something that you wrote in for the budget in 2019, 2021, and it has not passed. If you win this reelection, what would be your role as governor in terms of compromise moving forward?
I'd love to talk. It's going to be in my budget, no question about that. I'd love to have a conversation as to what we can do to make that happen, who gives and who doesn't give on that issue. It's something that the Republicans did support. They're the ones that created that in the first place. They supported it, and for safety issues and other issues. So I know some Republicans do support it. So let's start with that. I'll work with those folks and see if we can get the leadership to agree to it. I believe we can. To me, it's been a bipartisan issue in the past. If we have to give up something to make that happen, we have to do it. People have to be safe on the roads. They need to be able to get to work on time. They need to be able to drive their kids to the doctor appointment if they need to. It's a basic issue that shouldn't be a problem. So let's get it done.
Statewide test scores show students were set back academically by the pandemic and during the pandemic. Do you think some school districts waited too long to bring students back to the classrooms, and could you have done more to hasten that return?
Well, everybody should know that if you follow the pandemic, right from the get-go, my decision around schools was to let the local leaders make that decision in consultation with parents and anybody else that they want to, because it was impossible to have a statewide fiat around that issue. In rural Wisconsin, you have large classrooms with a small number of kids in there. So the mitigation in rural Wisconsin was a lot easier than the mitigation in Milwaukee or other urban areas. So that was, and then, we let them use the discussion of with their local public health officers and made those decisions. Did it vary across the state? Yes, they were primarily urban schools because the classrooms are more full. They're in a community that the community spread was truthfulness or ill will around this. It's just the fact of the matter is that across the state it was a different deal. We had schools in northern Wisconsin that had school every day for 2 straight years. And that just couldn't happen in a situation where the community spread is as much as it was in some of our urban areas. And so, and me ordering them, first of all, I don't think I have that authority, but second of all, I think the wisest decision is to allow those local officials make that determination with their parents, with their school board members, with their teachers, and that's the way it played out. Now, do I think that the pandemic hurt learning across the state of Wisconsin? Of course it did. We knew it would. We provided some resources to get some help in the last summer to have summer school across the state, and that did pick up our test scores. Actually, we went from 18th in the nation to 8th in the nation early on. But I also understand that remote learning doesn't work for every kid, especially if you don't have the equipment at home to do that. So we believe we're making some progress in the last test results that I saw, and we will continue to do that. That's why I don't believe cutting revenue to our public schools at this time by 40% is a good answer to that scenario.
I've spoken with business owners in Kenosha over the past couple of years, and there is a perception that you did not do enough in stopping the riots that happened back in 2020. It's not just Tim Michael saying that. Several business owners are saying that. So I'm wondering, what's your response to that, and what are you doing now to ensure that Kenoshans feel the support of their governor?
Well, we were there shortly after those civil disruptions to provide help. Actually, the Kenosha Area Business Group provided grants to small businesses to rebuild. We provided grants throughout the pandemic, large grants to allow different things to happen, whether it's in the healthcare world or whether it's in the educational world, significant increases. I want to address the issue right up front about what I did and didn't do. First of all, we were right in the same day that the individual was shot. We brought state patrol members into Kenosha to be helpful to the Kenosha Police and the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. We brought people from surrounding counties, worked with emergency management to do the same thing the same day that shooting happened. In addition, National Guard, I know that's the big controversy. I'm commander of the National Guard, but I have to be requested to bring people in. I did that. 2 o'clock in the morning, we got the request from Kenosha County. I immediately contacted the Adjutant General. We got things in motion. We had people there that day from the National Guard, and we doubled that number every day. Now, I know this is a political issue, and there's nothing I can do more than explain what happened. I did everything I was asked to do. You can ask the Kenosha County Sheriff. He's a Republican. He said the same thing. I did everything I was asked to do, and I'd do it again if I needed to do that. But especially when it comes to the National Guard, that request came in at 2 o'clock in the morning. I immediately turned around and made that happen. I brought in people, National Guardsmen and women from other states to fulfill further requests so that we had lots of National Guards men and women there doing their jobs, primarily protecting protecting facilities. So that's my answer.
Okay, I think it's time to turn it over to Rotary President Corrinne Hung.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your question.
All right.
Am I in your way?
No, you're okay. We're actually going to take these spots. So,
See ya.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Molly. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Ryan. All right, Governor.
Yes.
Like a little bit of a reprieve, and you can sit down and join me here. And here's the other mic for you. Let me get it up and going. Well, not quite. Let's see here. Or we can share. Oh, here we go. Great. All right, appreciate that. Nice round of questions. So, Governor, we have a few questions that were curated from the Rotary membership. And as I was listening to your remarks and listening to some of your responses, I'm going to select the ones that have the least amount of overlap. The first question I'd like to start with is around a little bit around safety. What is the justification for so many early prison releases, especially for those not even up for parole? And why was there no following the rule of law to notify victims and local police?
Well, can everybody hear me? Now they can. Great question. Parole board, as you know, is an independent body. They make the decision about parole. And I appoint the chair of the parole commission. And in the recent case, I thought that his judgment as it related to victims, victim getting input from the victims of those crimes was lacking severely, as well as his ability to connect with local police to let them know what's happening. That's why I asked them to change his mind on that decision and asked him to resign. And both of those things happened. So going forward, I just have to say this about parole. We can look at it and talk about it until we've got it resolved. But the fact of the matter is, I do not make those decisions on parole. I do not make those decisions on parole. And that's the law of Wisconsin. Now, what I do think can happen is that we could change some laws as it relates to victims of the crime, making sure that they have adequate ways to interact with that parole commission. And I'm going to go a little further. I apologize for this. But we also have to make sure that the issue of crime is not necessarily going to be resolved or not resolved by dealing with the parole commission. You know, Scott Walker or Tommy Thompson, I think, had 20,000 people that he paroled over time. So it has to be, we have to get at the issue of shared revenue. I hate to beat that drum again, but if we want communities, and I use Milwaukee as an example, to really be able to fight crime in a proactive way, they need more resources, and you see it right now with the mayor having to make some decisions about fire and police. But if we increase that shared revenue, then we can actually ask questions like, do we need more assistant DAs here? Do we need more investigators? Should we have night court? Do we need more bailiffs? Do we need more public defenders? Do we need more violence preventors? Do we need more training for folks in the public safety world? Those things all together, we have to connect the dots. If we think that just people are concerned about the parole commission and how they operate, that's fine. Let's try to take that on in a productive way. But if we don't connect the dots and provide the resources for the cities and counties to do the work that they need to do and they want to do, we're not going to accomplish much. Sorry, I'll keep my head straight.
Governor, we have a different question that I want us to move to, which is around resources. Please explain how the $5 billion in relief from the federal government was spent and your position on Wisconsin legislative oversight of that spending.
It was spent wisely, folks. It was spent on public health. How do you think those vaccines became free? How do you think that we got the pharmacists to go into nursing homes? How do you think the PPE got around the state? All those things that are part and parcel of dealing with the pandemic. Almost all, as you could say, $5 billion went to all those things. We spent another $1 billion on small businesses in the state and farmers and tourism industry that has helped us get one of the best economies we've had in recent years. But all the rest, think about how much we had to help and put into the hospital systems that were bursting at the seams. All those things cost money. And I know the question is from the legislature, well, we didn't approve that. Frankly, if we had waited for the legislature to make those decisions, COVID-19 will still be a pandemic in the state of Wisconsin. We had to react quickly and thoughtfully, and every bit of that $5 billion went to public health all across the state. It's not cheap, vaccines. It's not cheap to put up a hospital at the State Fair Park. All those things went into keeping people safe. And so no excuses for me. We saved lives, and I'm sticking to that. We did.
Governor, on the business and somewhat economic side, what funding and programs are directed at supporting first stage development of startups in Wisconsin? How can we get more support for new businesses so that first round funding is to the level of the East and West Coast states with whom we compete?
Yeah, we put a significant amount of money in the budget last time that was cut. I can't give you the exact amount, but the startup world was very pleased with our proposal, and we're gonna do it again. I think the Republicans in the legislature that took the money out, or at least decreased it by a significant amount of money, understand how important startups are to our state, and so it's going to be in the budget again. It's going to be more money than it was last time. I believe that something should be or should be bipartisan. So if that's something the Rotary's interested in and others, let's have at it. Let's have a good conversation when that budget comes out. I would say one of the things that we did during the pandemic that isn't necessarily the same, but our Main Street Bounce Back program had great success. Basically, we provided an incentive, a relatively small one, $10,000, to any entrepreneur that wanted to take over a vacant storefront. And there's lots of those in the state of Wisconsin. As of this time, I think we're up to over 6,200 or 300 new businesses that have taken over empty storefronts. I've visited hundreds of them over the last several months. They're doing fine. They're making money. And if you think about 6,200, and I think it's about 900 or so in Milwaukee County, those folks that are in Main Street businesses, they buy local, they hire local, they join the Chamber of Commerce, they lift up neighborhoods almost overnight. And we put another $25 million on the table to hopefully at some point in time in the near future have 10,000 new businesses on Main Streets all across the state of Wisconsin. Every county has taken advantage of this.
Thank you, Governor. I think we have time for one last question here. In your remarks, you spoke about resetting relationships with cities. Our Rotarian's question is, Milwaukee has budgetary problems. Specifically, how can the state help?
Well, that's, I wish I had that chart here, but it talks about shared revenue increases or decreases over the last 10 years. And I'll even include the 2 years I I was in office as governor. The increases, and I asked for money. First budget, I asked for 2% increase. Second budget, I asked for 4% increase. Both of those were zeroed out. And if you go up the years, 0, 0, maybe a little like 0.2, 0.-5. If you add all those together, it's a 9% decrease over those times in what we were going to do. And that doesn't even count inflation. We have, the state of Wisconsin has failed our municipalities, especially Milwaukee. Money comes to Madison. Does it come back in a level that's going to be helpful around public safety, around other issues? No, it can't be a 0% increase. It is my top priority in this next budget, period.
Thank you, Governor.